Hello, it's August 11th, 2022, and this is the weekly Backdrop developer meeting. We get together every week to talk about development activity in Drupal, Backdrop Core and beyond. My name is Nate Lambton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet. I'm core committer for the Backdrop project. We'll do some introductions. Robert and then Martin, if you guys would introduce yourselves.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming from Altadena, California.
I'm Martin Price, Yorkshire Pudding on the internet, coming from United Kingdom, Northeast England.
All right, great. Yeah, and that's it for today. We were talking about what we're going to do with this meeting. We're a little low on attendance and also on agenda items. There's nothing in the forum post for this week to discuss. And the core updates are also a little bit quiet. I think that this is like, we're right in the middle of August almost, when it's like peak vacation time, I think. So I hope everyone out there is enjoying vacations if you're taking one. We only had one, so we're going to keep things a little less formal today and just kind of banter a little bit. We did have one thing come up in Zulip this week. Indigozella posted a question about jQuery UI that she would like to be discussed. So there's a backdrop issue already. Hang on, I'll just share my screen for this. So this perennial issue, actually, keep jQuery UI up to date, is the issue being discussed, and in particular because of this security announcement that came out. This is a Drupal security announcement regarding an issue with jQuery UI, that jQuery UI released a security advisory that the checkbox radio elements have a potential vulnerability in them. We were checking this out beforehand. I wasn't even sure what checkbox radio, what it does. Neither did Robert or Martin. And so what it does is doesn't seem to do a whole lot. Maybe it adds some events or something like that, but we're not using this anywhere in core, even though it is bundled with core. So we end up in this situation kind of similar to Drupal potentially, where there's a vulnerability in a library that we're using, that we're bundling, but we're not actually using it. And so it is in no way exploitable in Backdrop core, and not exploitable otherwise, unless your module or site is actually using this particular portion of jQuery UI, which from our analysis, we can't fathom why you would want to use this particular component, because it doesn't seem like it does much.
The product selector looks a bit flashier if you're on the product selector, and you get slightly. You can modify with the customize. You can modify things, so it's a little bit different, but I can't think of anywhere where it would be used.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see this, but it also just seems like, on change, do something. Do that without this component. So I don't.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, we still have the problem that we need to resolve this issue. Anytime we have a bundled library, if it has a vulnerability, then it's our responsibility to update it. Kind of the bigger problem here is that updating jQuery UI is difficult. It's been done in the past. It looks like actually Indigozella did file a pull request already that I've not seen.
130 files.
Yeah, a lot of the vast majority of the files seem to be to do with I18N, So they're kind of internationalized files.
Yeah, let's see what's in one of these. Oh, well, it's a little bit hard to tell since it's compressed, but yeah, this is like translations. Well, it looks like she managed to do it, but it is super tedious to do this process, because what our folder structure or directory structure is different than that of jQuery UI. And it used to be that when you downloaded jQuery UI, it would use this structure, but then they changed it. And I think that even getting these compressed files now individually is difficult. And so the process that we've done in the past, if I recall correctly, is that you have to download the original source files for each one of these jQuery UI components manually or through a script, run them through a compressor of some kind like Uglify, and then replace all of the files in their current locations. So it's very tedious to do the upgrade. Let's see. I was expecting Indigozella to say something about how difficult this is, but she seems to have just done it.
Yeah, in that last comment she made, the previous issue, there's a discussion of how difficult it is.
Is this in Zulip or?
No. Go down the last comment on the page you're showing at the previous issue.
Previous issue. Yep.
So then there's the description of the process.
Yeah. Yep. Here it is. So download them. She wrote a script to actually do it. Yeah. Well, this is great. Yeah, thanks Indigozella for your work there to get this up to date, because we do need to update core. There will probably be a security release because that's our pattern for doing all this stuff. However, the potential for actual exploitation of this is extremely low. So, and normally we wouldn't even discuss security issues in a public meeting like this. But considering this has already been announced by jQuery UI and by Drupal, and the chances of it being exploited are virtually non-existent, that's the state of things. Yeah. So all very interesting. I wonder, let's check Zulip one more time if she had anything else she was asking about in particular. We should update. No. Yeah. Yep, I agree. We should update. We should update anyway. Like it's definitely good to always keep ourselves up to date. All right. Well, that's kind of it. That was the only major topic for today. It might be kind of fun just to, since this is a little less formal, to gossip a little bit. Did you guys see the Zulip post and the video from Drupal Camp Colorado? Jen participated in Drupal Camp Colorado as well in an open Q&A. And the kind of exciting thing is that Dries, the founder of Drupal, had also a Q&A in which the moderator asked preset questions that were asked from the community. Hey, do you have any questions for Dries? And one of the questions was asked by our own St. Paul Tim about Backdrop, and like how is, what's the potential for Backdrop and Drupal to collaborate, kind of continuing the discussion that we had from, is Backdrop Drupal Classic, at Backdrop Live. And we kind of got an answer, but it was a little it was a little bit like double-edged.
There seemed a few backhanded compliments.
Yeah. So here I'll read Tim's comments here. While Dries didn't say everything I would have liked him to say, I think his answer was helpful and generally positive. He stated two things which were not clear to me before. One, that he considers Backdrop part of the Drupal family, and two, that Backdrop is welcome at DrupalCon. I think he even mentioned sessions. The second one is interesting because it has not been clear to us as a community that Backdrop sessions are welcome at DrupalCon. I'm inclined to reach out to the DA and ask for official clarification on that to make sure it's official policy, not just Dries's opinion. Based upon this, I'm much more inclined to submit Backdrop CMS session to the next US DrupalCon and possibly attend. Yeah, thoughts?
Yeah, I watched the video and it was generally quite positive, which was great. You know, he did, and he said that they learned from Backdrop about the importance of backward compatibility, and so they put all these things in, you know, to improve backward compatibility, which is great. But it was sort of improving backward compatibility going from 8 to 9 and so forward, but nothing that kind of elided. There wasn't anything that addressed the big jump from 7. And of course, that's kind of the thing that Backdrop offers. So, but overall, it looked pretty good.
Yeah, I think overall it was positive. Yeah, there's a few bits. I was like, well, is that a compliment or is that not a compliment? I'm not sure. I think you said we like Backdrop. It keeps people on Drupal 7. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, some things it didn't. Yeah, kind of thinking that almost saying that Backdrop is Drupal 7. Like if you move to Backdrop, then you're quote still on Drupal 7, which is interesting. I would actually kind of love it if people did think that, because that would be great. That would be a really big win for you know, 500,000 sites that are on Drupal 7 if they could use Backdrop that easily. I wish it was actually that easy, but it's, you know, as everybody knows here, moving to Backdrop isn't exactly trivial either. It's a lot easier, but it's still a lot different.
I've got two things, something I kind of was wondering after seeing that. From this my last year of being in Backdrop land, it seems like the two biggest changes from Drupal 7 are layouts and configuration, all the stuff that moved into configuration management files. And my question to both of you and folks out in YouTube land is, does that move make it easier to then go to 8, or would it be harder to go to 8, or about the same? I mean, that is, once you've moved all your stuff into configuration files, would that make it easier to move to Drupal 8 because it's got configuration files, or is it they sufficiently different that it doesn't really buy you?
I'd say it doesn't really help at all, actually.
The Drupal one's in YAML, whereas ours are in JSON, is that?
Yeah. But in Drupal land, the active configuration is actually stored in the database, not in files at all. So files are actually, it looked like at one point that they were going to use files like we do, files on disk, but parsing YAML is expensive and slow. And so they, and there's other disadvantages, like disk isn't always necessarily a fast access thing. It's also not potentially centrally stored, you know. So we face some of those problems, but JSON files don't have the same problem as YAML, that JSON files are extremely fast to parse. And so YAML files are actually only used kind of as an intermediary when you export or synchronize your configuration. And other than that, the configuration is still all in the database in in Drupal 8 and 9.
Mm.
So yeah, it doesn't really, I mean, yeah, it's like getting like the configuration, it's easier to read in Backdrop, but you still have to do the mapping between what it was and what it is now. And because we have been changing things ever so slightly, you know, I don't know. But I mean, a lot of like, there's a huge difference already that Drupal 8 and 9 never really achieved full configuration migration anyway. Like views don't move. They're as far as I know, there's no way to move your views from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 and 9. And so that's also been kind of my experience for a lot of stuff configuration wise, that in Drupal, it's really kind of better to just rebuild everything and then write the migrations, because your configuration is just like, there's too much different. You just throw it away. So that's been my experience. Yeah, going back to this talk though, there is some really interesting things. Yeah, I am surprised because I've never seen Dries acknowledge that the Drupal community learned anything from Backdrop. You know, like that saying that that Drupal actually acknowledges that backwards compatibility is important, our number one core value, and that also the pivot in the slogan for Drupal from ambitious sites to ambitious site builders. That he talked about that at the last DrupalCon. That was an acknowledgement, essentially, that Drupal basically lost sight of the site builder role, the idea that you could build a site without code, and so therefore that Drupal lost sight of the smaller and medium-sized sites. And so I think they're trying to make Drupal more perceived more broadly again, to be like that Drupal is for everyone. But I've often found that that ambiguity in Drupal has not actually been like that wide of an audience has not been an asset to Drupal. It's been a hindrance, because you can't make something that's literally for everyone. You need to choose an audience in order to best serve that particular group of people. So I continue to think that Drupal will continue to be enterprise software and enterprise first. And that the efforts to try to cater to smaller sites to try to get their usage numbers back up, because that's what I think is going on here, is they're after market share. That it looks bad that they never will have as many sites on Drupal 8 and 9 as they did on Drupal 7, because it's just built for too large of an organization for most small sites to handle, and there are more small sites than there are large ones. So they're trying to basically cater to smaller sites just to get numbers back. I think that's what this is all about. But I don't think that they will necessarily be successful, because I think that Drupal has already permanently put itself in an enterprise space. And that's going to be their primary audience.
It's interesting when they talk about automatic updates and project browser. Is that, are they trying to put a web UI over to run the composer things in the background, or are they rebuilding some of the stuff that went before?
I believe they're trying to do Composer, build a UI on top of Composer, because I just can't fathom any other way that would possibly work. But yeah, I'm a little dubious of that entire effort, because I'm not sure that it's funny, because that's not an enterprise feature. You know, it's like it's not going to be useful for the audience that Drupal has. Because when you're using Composer, like it's like you're really tied into using the command line already.
Yeah, and also a deploy method, because if you're a smaller business or a non-profit and you're on a relatively reasonable cost hosting, and you try and run Composer, whether that's through SSH or through command line, it's going to time out and it's going to crash, because the shared hosting, certainly my experience of trying to use Composer on shared hosting, it just didn't work. And I never managed to get to grips with the whole doing it on local with Drupal, because there just wasn't the support. But yeah, I don't know that even running it through a UI will somehow make Composer work on the kind of more low cost hosting that smaller businesses tend to use.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Anyway, I think I'd like to at least go back to what we did get out of this that is positive. Yeah, that he considers Backdrop part of the Drupal family. That's something that I've not heard. I continued to think that he was looking on Backdrop as a hostile competitor, hostile project. He also said in there that, again, like, it wasn't quite complimentary, but he said they're good. I believe there are good forks and bad forks, and Backdrop is not a bad fork. He didn't say it was a good fork. He just said it wasn't a bad fork. And he also said that Backdrop is welcome at DrupalCon, which is very surprising, because we know for sure that has not been the case. Jen has been asked multiple times by Backdrop or by DrupalCon planning committees to speak and even keynote. And when this is like the planning committee, the people that the community portion of things that does the outreach and actually does the volunteering and stuff like that. But DrupalCon is financed by the Drupal Association. And so they have final authority in everything. And every time this has happened, Jen has asked the planning committee to check with the Drupal Association first, and the Drupal Association has come back and refused or rejected the proposals. And so the unofficial or real response that we've had previously is that proposals to speak at DrupalCon have been rejected by the Drupal Association explicitly. And so saying that Backdrop is welcome at DrupalCon is a really big shift. And I don't think that Tim says, if that's his opinion, that's one thing, or if this is actual official policy. I think what he kind of may have been inferring there was that members of the Backdrop community have been present at DrupalCon. And that's not quite the same thing. But maybe also, maybe finally buried the hatchet, I don't think that, I mean, the collaboration between community members between our two projects has actually been really excellent. I think the security coordination in particular has been really excellent. Even though it hasn't been perfect, the effort and the thoughtfulness of both communities working with each other. Backdrop helps refine and test Drupal 7 patches, for example, which the Drupal community appreciates. And we appreciate that we have access to security issues that are affecting all versions of Drupal, so that we can cross-check if those same vulnerabilities exist within Backdrop. And that's been done without really any explicit approval other than from like the security team lead at Drupal and our community members. So I definitely think the community effort is there, and that it's not universal, but it's overall it's generally still pretty positive. But this is some real advancement in the potential like thawing of relationships if this is actually if we can actually act on some of these things that Dries has said about how we can work together. So very interesting. And I'm also just really surprised. Well, I think some of this thing, Rachel Lawson, who I'm not sure, I don't think she's at the Drupal Association anymore, but she had been quite prominent. But she was the moderator, and I think that she has a generally fond opinion of Backdrop, and I really appreciate her surfacing and asking the question that Tim asked very specifically about Backdrop to Dries. And even though this was a pre-recorded session, that makes it even more notable because it wasn't like sprung on him as a surprise. It actually was asked in a pre-recorded environment and then later posted, which means they had an opportunity to remove it if they wanted to. So it's a really big deal, I think, that it's some official, maybe not official, but it's some acknowledgement of Backdrop and its effects on the Drupal project. And it's, generally kind of positive.
Just possibly worth mentioning, not in the forum post about the meetings, but there was a guy asking about, thinking about moving to Backdrop, but wanting to know, well, what will it look like moving from Backdrop 1 to Backdrop 2? And so I've tried to sort of provide some reassurances. We're very committed to trying to make upgrades as painless as possible, and this is what the current roadmap looks like, and that might change as Drupal 7, if Drupal 7 end of life changes. But in terms of, and I think the particular point he had was if he's developed lots of custom modules and then there's changes, how big a job is it going to be moving from 1 to 2? And I think this is relatively relevant for a development meeting. Do we have any idea of what that might look like for module builders?
Yeah, I think we do. Although, first of all, I'm not sure if you pointed out like our timeline for this, that Backdrop 2 isn't going to be around for quite a while yet.
Yes.
So first of all,
I said earliest 2025 is the current, what it currently says on the website. So.
Yeah, and then potentially Backdrop 1 would be supported until 2027 then. So that's it's kind of crazy even thinking that far.
Yeah.
But that's the plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, what that actually looks like will be kind of similar to. It would be nice if we could have some killer feature in Backdrop 2. We don't even know what that is yet, though, because we have found that with adequate planning and effort, we can introduce nearly any feature in Backdrop 1 without major breaks in compatibility. And so we've been really kind of struggling to find really big features that would only be in Backdrop 2 that we can't do in 1. What Backdrop 2 would probably be about, it would be nice if we get a major feature in there to incentivize people to upgrade, but primarily Backdrop 2 is going to be removing deprecated code. And so the good news is that at least as far as like deprecated functions are concerned, and deprecated methods, those are really easy to spot, especially if you use an IDE, because it will read those at deprecated PHP doc or doc blocks, and it will like put a strike through your function saying, hey, you shouldn't be using this function. You should be using some other replacement for it instead. And so that could be sometimes things that might be a little bit far reaching, like one function that really bothers me to no end is cache clear all, which is used everywhere. But cache clear all is a horrible function. It does like 6 different things. And what you should use instead is like cache flush, cache clear, cache. There's like all of these different methods on the cache object that you should be using instead. So, you know, there are things like that, you know, what we had been doing, you should be doing something else. But, you know, with like coder upgrade, for example, it can identify those sorts of issues and can make it so that your backdrop site, ideally, if you're writing custom code now, you should strive to avoid deprecated stuff. And you also, unfortunately, kind of need to keep an eye out for new stuff that's being deprecated as time goes on. But you'd have a couple-year period there where the list of deprecations is locked. There's no new changes because Backdrop 1 is no longer getting new minor releases. And you can use that 2-year period to transition your any deprecated code to the new equivalents. And then in theory, you can upgrade from Backdrop 1 to Backdrop 2 with no modifications to your code at all if you've already removed all the deprecated stuff. So that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah.
It also is possible. I would like, this is a unnecessary thing, but I would like us to get rid of the Drupal wrappers in Backdrop 2. So Drupal add CSS wrapping to Backdrop add CSS. You can already turn that off in settings.php. You just turn off this one flag, and it removes a JavaScript wrapping layer and an include file that wraps like several hundred Drupal functions. I think that should go away. But
I'm afraid I've probably been the cause of lots of the issues related to Drupal compatibility, because I tend to switch it off and then find all the things that break when you switch it off. So I've been on a one-man mission to try and tackle that wherever I find it, but
yeah, totally. I see that every now and then. It's particularly prevalent in contrib modules. Sometimes you just get like random things, and it also happens sometimes when people are cross-porting stuff from Drupal, like a patch or something like that, and they just forget to do the replacement in the application of the patch, and then you end up with the one stray Drupal function or something like that in there. But yeah, all of these things, I mean, you know, we've got several years to sort it all out. I think that we can totally get a handle on it, and moving to Backdrop 2 shouldn't be a big deal for anyone. That's what I would like to see, at least. Yeah, it's really, I mean, major versions for us are almost like more like a housekeeping sort of thing than they are like, you know, major new features. But eventually, what we'd probably see is that there would be compelling features in Backdrop 2 that aren't being ported to Backdrop 1, and that would be the reason why you'd want to upgrade, not to mention the end of life of Backdrop 1. So, yeah, I would be curious. You know, we haven't really, we have some, I think we have some meta issue that's like remove the deprecated stuff for Backdrop 2. We haven't even made the Backdrop 2 branch yet, so we haven't actually done any of that work. But it is kind of an interesting question about like what stuff should we stop using. And I think that, you know, there is the potential for doing things like substantially reducing our use of jQuery, for example, because that's definitely a trend that is ongoing, is that jQuery is much less commonly used than it used to be. And it also is a lot less valuable than it used to be because browser compatibility has gotten so good and so wide that it serves less of a purpose. However, I think we'd probably still include it, same as Drupal does. It's a lot of effort to remove it from absolutely everywhere. And it's a lot of effort, and really for not a whole lot of benefit either. I mean, jQuery itself is, 20K of JavaScript. I think it actually compressed. Isn't it like 8K or something like that? It's completely insubstantial in this grand scheme of JavaScript sizes. And there's just so much functionality that uses it. Yeah, and actually jQuery UI, rather interestingly, has kind of started being supported again. Like the security announcement that we were talking about, it wouldn't be a security announcement if it was totally unsupported. It actually got moved to GitHub, has new maintainer, and is receiving some minor updates now. It would really be lovely if it finally got official support for touch support, because it really doesn't have that right now. And I don't know, maybe the tide will turn again, and maybe jQuery will never go away. It'll be like, jQuery is so valuable and so widely used by millions of websites that it's worth the effort to maintain it. It is kind of surprising that something as popular as jQuery, maybe not jQuery itself, but jQuery UI that is used on millions of sites would stop being supported and nobody would care to pick it back up again. It's like if you had there was an area for a developer to become an open source hero, like this is an opportunity, right? Yeah, but I don't know. Developers are they're a fickle bunch where they like to do what's cool and trendy, and jQuery lost that a very long time ago. But we're kind of similar. We're in that group too. We're not really after the cool and trendy. We're after this stable and useful. So it definitely puts us in a similar group.
Oh, that's really helpful. I'll point the person who's asking that question to that section of the YouTube video, so hopefully he'll find that reassuring.
Yeah. All right. Do you guys have anything else to discuss? I think maybe we'll wrap it up for today. This was kind of fun to just do a little change of pace. I hope everybody's enjoying their vacation once again. Hope you guys get a vacation too. And yeah, I think we'll sign off for today. So thanks, folks, and we'll see you on the internet.
Okay, bye.